This is Brian Gordon with Chapter 10 of the Spellgrazer Saga. Chapter 10, Returning Home. It did not take Chandra long to discern the events of the evening prior. Residue of the energies used permeated the area. A mystic battle had taken place, the book the suggested cause. Nothing else seemed to have been disturbed, and nobody had been harmed, only the book stolen in the night. What truly concerned her was the lack of protection offered by her wards. Some mysterious force had bypassed her magic, something she would have to report to her elders as soon as she returned home. One by one the others awoke, layers of magic and exhaustion, a caustic mix that ate away at their sleep. Dunmal was confused by his dreams, but he felt a sense of comfort in them that he could not explain. It felt as if some part of him had grown, gained some kind of unexplored potential. Perhaps he had taken some of the talk about magic to heart, literally. He had been told that his style of fighting already incorporated a form of magic, merging his will with that of his blade to create devastating attacks. It was entirely possible that he had the potential to harness other forms of magic as well. Unbeknownst to him, a mysterious form of ancient, primeval magic had already bound itself to him. Ronsa came out of his meditative trance, aware that something had occurred but unsure of the circumstances. He did not care much for the foul stench of the magics used against them in their sleep, not much of a fan of magic in general. While some of his techniques incorporated mystical elements, he steered clear of involvement with the deities that Barlow and Chandra followed. The devotion they showed to an unseen force, as impressive as it may have been, reminded him too much of his own experience with blind devotion. It had nearly cost him his life, and he remained skeptical of mysterious forces from that point on. Barlow, exhausted from the day before, stirred but did not rise immediately. Chandra decided to let him sleep as she started to gather her belongings around him, but he rose quickly once he heard her. She explained the events that had taken place overnight as best she could, still unsure of what had actually happened. It seemed that the entire group had shared dreams of magics far worse than what they had dealt with over the previous days. Something had tarnished the land and was starting to seep further and further into their world. Ronsa was the only one who had avoided the nightmares, but he had seen enough of the growing evil to know that something larger and far more sinister was at work. Each of them prepared to part ways, but before they did, they shared a breakfast conjured up by the joint efforts of Barlow and Chandra. They discussed their various travel plans, congratulated the king on his return to the bipedal world, and finished dividing the payment they had acquired. After a brief farewell, they split up and went in different directions at the crossroads not far from their campsite. Though parting ways, their destinies were forever intertwined. Barlow found a road to the east and followed the sun's home back towards his temple, housed in the mountains along the edges of their lands. Aside from the various status reports he had collected from the towns surrounding his temple, he had also encountered a powerful evil. Though he was not sure, he thought it may be linked to the growing turmoil in the lands around them. Perhaps his elders would know more about the lingering spirit he had helped defeat, and the demon he had tried to control. Had the tome not disappeared, he might have even been able to glean more information about their ordeal, but the mysteries of the donkey's kingdom would hover over him as he continued along the roads leading back to his temple. For a brief way, Chandra and Ronsa shared a road to the west, but split up once they met with a path that led south. As they walked together, Ronsa shared a few simple maneuvers with his weapons, and left her with a small dagger which she placed in her belt. With a quick goodbye, Ronsa started his way down to the southern range, which would take him to the desert along the edges of the abyss. There he would find a village he once called home. Sun overhead, Chandra continued westward toward the dense forest that surrounded the small village she had hailed from. Already on the western side of the capital tower, her village would not take long to reach, but the roads through the thick woods were often home to many dangers. Though she was more than capable of defending herself, she wanted to return home quickly. The mysterious vanishing book had left her with a sense of discomfort, and she wanted to review what she had learned from her time within the pages with the elders in her town. Dunmal was in no hurry when he departed from the group, just as content to go one direction as another. He had no masters to return to, no elders to file reports with, or gods to commune with. He had only his heart to follow. While he thought he traveled north in search of answers to some of his lingering questions about magic from a mage guild nestled in the northern range, something else drove him. From deep within, he was led towards the mountains, toward a power that had lain dormant for many years, a small taste of the shadows that hung heavily over the struggling world of Karados. One by one, they disappeared into the landscape, across rivers and into caves, each on their own path to glory. Though the world was full of perils, the roads were traveled heavily enough that most of the dangers lurked far from their worn paths. The king had not made it more than halfway back to his castle before he felt the familiar churning in his stomach. Sweat poured from him as his body tensed up, his arms and legs folding on themselves as his fingers and toes clenched. Dark hairs sprouted all over, his face contorted and stretched until it formed the snout he had sought to escape. It seemed that he was faced with only one option: find another adventurer, and hope that they could keep the book from returning home to the wizard's room in the tower. Thank you for joining me for part 1 of the Spellgrazer Saga, A Kingdom for a Donkey. I hope you will return for part 2, The Shadows Advance. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed.